You're standing at a corner drugstore counter in 1973, and your hand goes straight for a twisted red wrapper without even looking. That candy bar doesn't exist anymore. Not on any shelf, anywhere, in any store. It vanished so quietly that most people never got the chance to say goodbye. Today, we're counting down 20 candy bars America loved and lost, one by one, and some of these will hit you harder than you expect. Stick around, because number 14 has a twist that even candy historians argue about. If you remember even 3 of these, drop the name of your favorite one below in the comments and also subscribe the channel before we keep going. It only takes a second, and it helps more people find this video. Number 20. Choco'Lite and Nestlé made this one light and airy, like a chocolate bar that had been whipped with air pockets running through the center. You'd bite down and it would almost crackle. The fact most people forget is that it used a special aeration process borrowed from European chocolate makers. It got pulled in the early 1990s when Nestlé simplified its candy lineup to focus on bigger sellers. Somewhere out there, a kid who's now a grandparent still remembers that strange light crunch. Number 19. Vexo. This one barely lasted past its launch, a chewy caramel bar with a peanut coating that companies tested briefly in the late 1970s. It never got wide distribution outside a handful of regions. Limited test markets meant most of the country never even knew it existed before it was gone. It died from underexposure, not bad taste. A candy bar that came and left like a rumor. Number 18. Powerhouse Hershey's answer to the working man's candy bar. Thick, dense, and built to fill you up on a lunch break. A single bar had enough peanuts and fudge to feel like an actual meal. Hershey eventually folded the recipe into other bars rather than keeping it standing alone. It got absorbed instead of killed outright, which somehow feels sadder. Workers used to keep one in a toolbox, just in case. Number 17. Chicken dinner candy. Despite the bizarre name, there was never any chicken in it, just peanuts, caramel, and a fudge-like nougat wrapped to look like a roasted dinner plate. The name came from a phrase people used in the Depression era, meaning, "You finally got something good." It disappeared by the 1960s as cleaner, simpler branding took over the candy aisle. The name alone makes people stop scrolling just to ask what it tasted like. Number 16. Forever Yours. A chocolate-covered caramel bar marketed almost like a Valentine's gift. Smooth and rich with a name that sounded more like a promise than a snack. Mars eventually folded its formula into what became the Milky Way Dark Bar. It wasn't discontinued so much as quietly renamed and reshaped. Somewhere a couple still remembers buying 2 on a first date. Number 15. Caravelle peanuts, caramel, and crisped rice layered under chocolate, similar to a 100-gram bar but with its own distinct chew. Nestlé pulled it from shelves in the early 1980s as the company trimmed overlapping products. It got cut for being too similar to its own siblings. A candy bar killed by its own family resemblance. Number 14. Bar None. Here's the twist nobody expects. Hershey created Bar None as a direct answer to the Mars candy bar boom of the 1980s, layering wafer, fudge, and chocolate into something almost like a dessert bar. It actually had a loyal following strong enough that fans organized petitions decades later trying to bring it back. Hershey discontinued it anyway in the late 1990s, despite real demand, simply because shelf space mattered more than nostalgia. It's one of the only candy bars on this list that died while people were still actively buying it. Number 13. Milkshake. A chocolate bar built to taste like an actual milkshake, with a soft, whipped nougat center under a chocolate shell. Hollywood brands made it, and for decades it sat right next to Zero bars at the checkout counter. It lost shelf space when Hershey acquired the brand and trimmed the lineup down to its strongest sellers. The name alone could make a grown man stop mid-sentence at a flea market. Number 12. Look Bar. Caramel, peanuts, and crisped rice combined into something close to a cousin of Snickers, made by Mars but never given the same marketing push. It quietly disappeared in the 1980s as Mars focused budget on its flagship bars instead. Smaller bars simply couldn't compete for ad dollars against their own siblings. A candy bar that lost a fight it didn't know it was in. Number 11. Marathon, 8 inches of braided caramel covered in chocolate, twisted like a rope and sold specifically so kids would feel like they were getting more for their money. Mars measured it by length on the wrapper, not weight, which was almost unheard of at the time. It got discontinued in the late 1970s when rising sugar prices made the long shape too expensive to keep profitable. People still talk about unraveling it like a tiny edible rope before eating it strand by strand. Number 10. 7-Up Bar, not the soda. 6 different flavored centers: caramel, vanilla, fudge, coconut, and more. All packed under one chocolate shell shaped in sections like a sampler box compressed into a single bar. Pearson's made it for decades before it slowly vanished through the 1979 candy market shakeup. The mechanism was simple. Multi-flavor bars became too costly to produce compared to single-flavor competitors. It was basically a candy box disguised as a candy bar. Number 9. Reggie. Bar named after baseball legend Reggie Jackson, with peanuts, caramel, and chocolate, and famously thrown onto the field by fans on opening day in 1978, when Jackson hit a home run his first time at bat. That single moment is considered one of the strangest celebrations in baseball history. The bar faded through the 1980s once Jackson's playing career slowed, and the marketing tie-in lost its pull. A candy bar that was born from a literal celebration and quietly disappeared once the cheering stopped. Number 8. Summit. A crunchy wafer bar layered with peanuts and chocolate made by Mars and marketed with a hiking, outdoorsy feel that matched the late 1970s fitness wave. It had a satisfying snap that fans still describe decades later. Mars discontinued it in the early 1980s to push resources toward Twix, which used a similar wafer concept. It lost out to its own cousin. Number 7. Bonomo Turkish Taffy. Not technically a bar, but beloved the same way. A slab of taffy so hard you had to smack it on a table or counter to crack it into pieces before eating it. Kids treated breaking it like part of the fun. The original Bonomo factory closed in 1980 after decades of family ownership, and the brand drifted through owners who never matched the original texture. The mechanism here wasn't taste. It was a broken supply chain that never fully recovered. Anyone who grew up smacking that taffy on a kitchen table still flinches a little hearing the sound in their memory. Now here's something most people watching this don't know yet, a fact that changes how you'll see the whole list once we're done. Number 6. O. Henry. Original recipe. The bar still exists today, but the version your grandparents loved doesn't. The original formula used real cream and a softer caramel before reformulations in the 1980s and 1990s changed the texture to cut costs and extend shelf life. The bar surviving while the original recipe quietly disappeared is exactly the kind of loss most people never notice happened at all. You can still buy the name. You just can't buy the memory. Number 5. Cherry Mash. A pink and red cherry-flavored center covered in chocolate and crushed peanuts, made by Chase Candy Company since 1918, and beloved mostly in the Midwest. National competitors with bigger ad budgets slowly pushed it out of mainstream stores through the 1970s and 1980s. It survives in small pockets today, but most of the country lost access without ever knowing why. Regional candy often dies quietly, without headlines, without warning. Number 4. Zagnut Original Formula. The bar technically limped along for decades, but the toasted coconut and peanut butter center fans loved in the 1960s was reformulated repeatedly as ingredient costs rose. Hershey eventually discontinued it fully in 2019, closing out a slow fade that had actually started 50 years earlier. Sometimes a candy bar doesn't disappear all at once. Sometimes it disappears one ingredient at a time. Number 3. PB Max. Peanut butter and oats pressed into a cookie base covered in chocolate created by Mars in 1989 and an immediate hit with strong sales numbers. Despite the success, Mars pulled it in 1993 over an internal conflict, reportedly because an executive personally disliked peanut butter products competing with Snickers. It's one of the few candy bars ever discontinued not because people stopped buying it, but because of a decision made in a boardroom no customer ever saw. Loyal fans still call it the bar that died from politics, not taste. Number 2. Choco'Lite. A thin, crisp chocolate wafer bar from the 1950s and 60s, simple and snappable, often sold for a nickel at corner stores and soda fountains. As candy production consolidated through the 1970s, small regional makers like this one were bought out or shut down entirely. The mechanism wasn't failure. It was the candy industry shrinking down to a handful of giant companies. An entire era of small, local candy makers vanished along with bars just like this one. Number 1. Necco Wafer Bar Line. Not just a candy, but one of the oldest continuously running candy companies in America, dating back to the 1840s, finally shutting its doors in 2018 after a sale fell through at the last moment. The factory closed with almost no warning, leaving longtime employees and loyal customers stunned within days. It wasn't outcompeted. It wasn't reformulated into nothing. It simply ran out of time. For many people, this closing felt less like losing a candy bar and more like losing a piece of American history itself. There's one more thing you need to know before you go, and it's the part most candy lists like this one always skip. Almost every bar on this list didn't disappear because people stopped loving it. It disappeared because a company somewhere decided shelf space mattered more than memory. Before you leave, tell us the name of the very first candy bar you ever bought with your own money. This is what we do at Lostways America. Every week we go back. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this one took you back, give it a like. It helps someone else find their way back too.